Hello and welcome to the Africa Soft Power podcast, a show changing narratives and improving realities by incorporating vital and unseen African perspectives into global conversations while strengthening connections with the international diaspora community. My name is Folashade Anozie, and I have here with me today Mr. Obi Asika. Mr. Obi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be
Mr.
here.
Obi is the co-convener and chief advisor of the Africa Soft Power series. He is a soft power advocate focused on the possibilities that the creative and cultural industries offer for Nigeria, Africa, and the global Black diaspora. He's also the national coordinator of the technical working group for the creative industries, tourism, culture, and hospitality sectors for the 2020 to the 2030 Media and Long-Term National Development Plan for the Nigerian 2050 Agenda. Wow. Welcome. Welcome to the show, Mr. Obi.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good to be here.
Great. Glad to have you here. Now, you sit on the board of several companies, and with your deep background and experience in the creative and cultural sectors, I'm sure that you're frequently asked to join different boards of organizations that work in that creative space. But I want to know, what was it about ASP that made you want to join the leadership and advisory board?
I think to be 100% honest, I think it's the leadership and the people. I think Nkiru is very special, and she's a deep strategic thinker. And the honest thing is that I've probably been, for the last 10, 15 years, the primary advocate of Nigerian soft power. And I've spoken about it extensively. I've put it into the heads of every minister, every government official I ever meet, because I do believe that Nigerian soft power can drive the continent, if not just Africa, not just Nigeria. And she kept saying to me, Africa. And I was like, Nigeria. So, I mean, that strategic vision to make it bigger, to sort of talk about it from the African perspective, I think is really, really important. And the fact that you actually created something that's truly unique and creating something that only is not just conceptual, I think it's also intellectual. It's also about programming. And in many ways, it's about enabling the unseen to be seen. Because really, if we're being 100% honest, for the last 500 years, we Africans, and I would say Africans, I mean all Black people, wherever you are, our narrative has been undermined by a different agenda. And it is important to reclaim your narrative and to own it. And I think ASP is a very, very important platform for that specific thing.
Now, a lot of people talk about reclaiming the narrative, and we hear that a lot. Why do you think that's important?
Because if you don't reclaim the narrative, you will stay a slave. It's a very simple thing. We live in a world which is defined by narratives created by white people. Some call it the white supremacist agenda, but it is what it is. Now, the question is, if you have no sense of self, no sense of your history, if you have no value in your own culture, in your own language, in your own faith belief systems, if you reject them and believe they are not valid, right, then you already have a serious crutch you're carrying. So I think Africa and the African diaspora has suffered massively from these interventions from colonialists. But I'm not one of these people that sits here and thinks, let's have a party about colonialism or, no. I think we have so much that is so rich. We just have to tell our story. I'm tired of slave films from the American perspective. I want to see Aquino from the African perspective. I want to understand the stories of our people that took the world, right? Because we took the world before everybody, because we are the owners of the origin of the world. But if you don't tell the story, you can't validate it. And that's what Europe understood very early. So they retold everybody's story and reordered it. So they came first, but it's not true. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that's very insightful, particularly with telling our own stories and how we need to share stories beyond just African slaves from the American perspective, sharing stories from the African perspective as well.
Of course.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I said the trauma of 25 million people lost. That period of trauma, people don't really think about what it means to the families left behind. The young men who are gone, who cannot no longer grow the land. The women who are gone, who are traumatized. Those societies in Africa that are affected by that. So you think about that in terms of that trauma, the loss behind. Then you think about the energy, the labor. That free labor built industrial Europe. It built America. And it was not paid for, right? And that lack of value translated into how they were treated in America and in Europe. Unfortunately, in Africa here, there has been a separation because we didn't really understand what they went through on that side. We didn't necessarily see it. And unfortunately, some of us, even till today, seem to think or not understand that other people created the rift, right? So slavery was global business. It wasn't just an African thing. But the key differential is the racial side in the African narrative, which now diminishes you based on your skin. Which, of course, if you're an intelligent person, you went to school, skin color is purely a chemical thing, got nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
But human beings are literal, especially us. So it's what you see is what you believe, right? And we're living in a world where other people have defined the world for us, and which is why you see Africans say all kinds of strange things sometimes, questioning their own selves, questioning their own origins, questioning their own value. And I feel that's the sad part of being African, because you're still searching for validation in 2023. You're still saying, do you realize that Igbo cosmology is much older than Christianity? You realize that Ifa is binary code. Why have we run from ourselves? We run from ourselves because of the imposition of foreign faiths. And that's a fundamental fact for all Africans. So the duality of being African means that you're connected to your essence and to your people. And in many cases, that goes beyond any framing that Islam or Christianity can actually put on you. And it is about understanding that and embracing it and not running from anything. Because I believe that being African means you are the origin of the world. So once you understand that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like a few days ago was really, really hot. I mean, the weather is generally hot in Lagos, but I was thinking I was telling my mom that, can you just imagine that slaves back in America actually had to work under these conditions, even worse, even in Africa too. So it's just interesting. And then to your point about not knowing our narrative and our stories, doesn't that also connect to education? So if you don't tell these stories in schools, if you don't teach children, how can people just, know what the story is? Well,
this is it. I mean, I think that education and history, I mean, obviously, in Nigeria, we've had the challenge with history in schools. We've had the challenge in how we approach history. And sometimes when I say history, people think, it's old stuff. History is current. History is today. Everything you're doing now is history. It just is going to be projected later by somebody that comes in 100 years' time. So history is not about old stuff. History is about how did stuff change? Why did it change? What caused the change, right? And a lot of times we don't interrogate that. And when you interrogate it, you'll find out it's about man, it's about trade, it's about business. Do you understand? And these are the things that drive humanity. And humanity, a lot, is affected by technology, right? So I think we can build so much more. We can build forward. And we're in the African century. There's nothing anybody's going to do about that. How many Africans by 2100? 3 billion?
So we need to start capitalizing on that.
We needed to do it 30 years ago, but hey, today's not a bad day to start.
Today's never late. So bringing it back to ASP, which started in 2020, which was peak COVID, and now in 2023, they're going to be having their second major in-person summit in Kigali, Rwanda. Now, as a member of the board, what impresses you the most about ASP?
I think it's the strategic roadmap. I think it's the way it's high level from day one, high level conversations with leaders across different spaces that affect these creative industries, which are connected to the innovation industries. Because what I think it is we're thinking about how do you unlock all this value that's locked into IP, that's locked into innovation, that's locked into storytelling, that also affects the core creative industries, which are basically art, architecture, fashion, sports, creative business, music, obviously, comedy, Nollywood, African cinema. Because for me, what we found, one of the key things I won't forget is in the first sessions we had, there was a lady, I think she was an African-American lady, very senior, I think former American Express banker. And at some point in time during the panel, she said, I've never been on a panel like this with Africans. And I was like, wow. Yeah, because many times we haven't seen each other and we're not invited to the same rooms and nobody's creating the access. So I think Africa Soft Power, the first thing it's done is bring people together. People that have a lot of influence all over the world in their own spaces, but maybe didn't know there were other people doing the same thing in their same space that are of the same kind. whether it's in Cameroon, whether it's in Ghana, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in Colombia. I love the lady who was a former minister in Colombia. Before we started our session, I was chatting to her offline. This is in 2020. And she starts telling me about Netflix and how she's watching Nollywood. And I'm like, really? How come? And she's the first Black minister in Colombia. And she tells me that, look, there are 10 million Black people in Colombia. And I'm like, my goodness. I had no idea there were that many. And then she now says, from those 10 million Black people in Colombia, we watch Nollywood. We don't understand because it's all in English. But, we understand everything because it's us. It's our story. We're African. And I say, yeah, that's the whole point. The unseen, the unheard. That's the same thing that drives the explosion of Afrobeats and our fashion and our dance. So I think for me with Africa, soft power is the strategy, the consistency, being at the Oscars, being at the UNGA, being at the African American Summit, right? These are the highest level events globally anyway. So for Africa Soft Power to be at these events is also validating the capacity, the talent, and the potential of the Africans, wherever they might be. And I think that's what the agenda is. That's what the collective desire is. I love it. I think that has to be commended. It's not something which people take for granted, because let's be real. Nobody has unlooked $100 million or $1 billion and put behind the brand yet. But there's no reason why they shouldn't, because this brand is representing all of us. It's a common aspiration. I think that's the way we should look at it. It's a common aspiration. We have to collaborate to be bigger. We don't have the same funding as others, but we can build a pool. I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's about that bridge building, like you said.
It's the bridge. We've been doing it for 35 years anyway. We just didn't know what it was called.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things about, which you kind of already mentioned about the caliber of people that they're able to bring to discuss ideas and strategies for success. But one of the things that you have mentioned is the issue of ego and how it limits our ability to move further. Can you speak on that a little, and how do you think we can solve that problem?
Well, my late father used to call it ABM, acting big man. The big man phenomenon, I think, is a problem in Africa. It definitely is a problem in Nigeria. And it's something that I think was generational, and hopefully we can move away from it. Because what the big man phenomenon creates is a situation where the younger people can't approach that person. The younger people feel intimidated and locked out of that conversation. And there's not necessarily any real value the so-called big man is bringing to the table, except some sort of big man reputation. So I think what's important to change is to park the ego. And that comes from leadership. It is only leaders that have ego in the first place. So for me, I've always respected those leaders that don't have ego. So I can think of a number of billionaires who are Nigerian, who I know, who literally have zero ego. Aliko Dangote is one of them. Tunde Folawiyo is another. You meet these people, they behave like regular people, but you'll meet a guy who's the driver for that guy. And he's got the ego of 1,000 heads of state. Do you understand? So I think it's about human behavior, about people understanding how to connect to other people, understanding that I don't need to try to intimidate you or to talk you down. What we need is to build. And to build, you have to put your ego aside and say, you know what, maybe you know better. Maybe I don't know it all, which is not so easy for Africans to do. Apparently, I don't know why.
I think it kind of ties back to your point about how we don't know ourselves. Because we don't even know our own history and how powerful we are, both as a people and as individuals. So because we don't know that, you think that someone's going to look down on you. So I think there's a connection there.
Look, it's like something I tell young Nigerians a lot. I said, listen, yes, I'm the first executive producer of Big Brother Nigeria. I brought it to Nigeria. But the reason I mention that is nothing to do with the TV show. Is that if you Google Big Brother Nigeria, prior to 2005, what you will see is 10,000 pages of African heads of state thanking their big brother Nigeria. Do you understand? That is because our foreign policy for 50 years is Africa first. That's because we committed resources to helping 38 African countries free themselves from colonialism. I mean, South Africa is the biggest success story, right? And Nigeria for 27 years paid Nigerians, not the government, Nigerians paid income tax towards the SADC, the South African Defense Fund, to free Mandela and free all those people. And this is part of not telling the story. So you get cast and framed as, oh, you're Nigerian, you're negative. No. So when you're the biggest, you don't have to compete. You enable everybody around you to be bigger because you're always going to be the biggest. There's never going to be a time when there's more Africans. 1 in 7 Africans in Nigeria, or 1 in 5, depending who you talk to. It's always going to be like that. So we have to have less ego, dealing with our African brothers and sisters to enable them. And I think that's what we've done in our foreign policy for years. But maybe we haven't told the stories. Our filmmakers haven't told the stories. Our Nigerians don't even know. So Nigerians yap themselves all the time. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. That's not the truth.
Yeah, because when you said so, I was like, well, there's so many stories to be told. There are
millions. There are millions. And it's not a monoframe, and I'm not doing marketing for government.
Of course.
The point is that, you can live in your greatness and not know it. And one of the issues that ASP and platforms like this can help with is with shaping the narrative. And that's something we need to think and understand. That you use the soft power to win. Partners, collaborators, investors, funders, that's what brings them in.
So that's what people have said America has done so well, with their creative industries.
No, it's just, look, America is driven 70% by IP industries. The IP industries are the soft power industries. That's what America's built on. California, Silicon Valley and Hollywood, those 2 industries plus the agriculture in California make it number 3 economy in the world or something close to that. And if you even think about the fact that Silicon Valley is coming out of a university initially, out of Stanford, right? You look at what the Indians have done with the IITs in India. In Africa, we have no excuse. Indigenous innovation is home in Africa. It's indigenous to us. From the Ifa binary codes I talked about, from the pyramids and the mathematical equations that built those things, it's all over around us, but we just need to embrace it and stop running from it.
Stop othering it.
Exactly. So when you embrace it, you're like, hey, wait a second, this thing's actually, that is my superpower. My superpower as an African is my ability to commune with other Africans. And I say, like in music, as a head nod. Like when you hear the beat,
yourself.
If you're Black, it. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, the 2023 summit is happening in Kigali, Rwanda. It's from May 23rd to May 27th. There are going to be 3 conferences. One, you have the conference with the women. You have one on the Creative and Innovative Industries Conference. And of course, we have the Africa Soft Power Gala Awards. But with the 2 conferences, I want to know, what topics are you expecting the speakers to discuss? What issues do you think are important that they actually address or touch on?
Well, I think when you start with African women on board, right, I think that's such a powerful concept. And it's such an important conversation. Because in the first instance, just tying into the global conversation of Black Lives Matter, I've told every Black female friend of mine, listen, you need to step up right now and get paid. Because the world is going to compensate Black people and African people. And Black women are going to be in the face and the lead of it everywhere. So I think African Women on Board is a very important platform strategically and in terms of, just the direction. And I think their topics have to be about collaboration. Because, in fact, for all of these summits, it's got to be collaboration. It's got to be the underlying theme. Because if you're doing great in a silo, that's only good in the silo. You've got to bring it together and find some converged points of action. Let's push that agenda. Let's push more women to look at elective positions. I think that's really important. And if you go beyond that, I think in terms of the Innovation Summit, the startup situation, I'm involved with the National Startup Act here in Nigeria. We're very proud of the work that's been done there, and the National Startup Act is up. And there's a lot of collaboration going on the continent. Tunisia, a few other countries are trying to bring their startup situations together. I think that's another place that conversation can be deepened. Because the investment you see coming into the sector can easily be 10x, right? It's a function of the funnels and discoverability. So I think platforms like ASP create more access, more information, and more sort of comfort for investors to say, oh, okay, this is what's happening. This is how it's happening. This is why it's happening. And then for the ASP Gala and honors, tremendous. You need to celebrate. You need to honor people. You need to actually understand the journeys of these people and recognize it. Because a lot of times, the people who do the work don't get recognized.
Exactly.
The people who are really the outliers that make these things happen are not seen. So the ability to do that is in itself an important thing. And so I think it's a great event, looking forward to, tied into the BAL weekend, finals weekend as well.
Yeah.
So with all of that, that's a great celebration. And, Kigali has positioned itself to be a receptacle of these sort of events. And I'm happy that ASP is a pioneer to bring the continent to Kigali in a different form, in a different way. And it's not just the continent, because, it's global. I have people asking me already from the States, from, Europe, are we going to Kigali? And I'm like, maybe we are. Of course. And I'm like, of course we are. We're all going to be there.
Yeah. That's great. Now, you have obviously been in the space for, I don't want to make you too old.
Don't call me an ancestor, man.
Yeah, you've been in space for
That's
quite
for
quite a long time. What are you looking forward, I guess, let me phrase that. What are you looking forward to for the African continent in the next 15 to 20 years? You kind of already touched on that in terms of building bridges and leading with, would I say leading with sense? But talk about that.
But I think, it's like literally what everybody in the creative industries is focused on and what everybody on the continent is focused on is where's the money? So I think it's about the money. I think by 2030, the Nigerian creative industries will be $100 billion per annum. That's just Nigeria. If you extend to the continent, we could be approaching $500 million, right? 500 billion, right? Which is, now you're talking serious money. But you're still not close to what's happening in Silicon Valley and some of these places. But I feel like on this continent, within the next 5 to 10 years, as our content further globalizes, right, there's two things that happen. We globalize further, we build more facilities and more access on the continent. So, for example, cinemas, we have one cinema per 700,000 people. So the cinema experience is still an important experience. Exactly. So probably need to add 10,000 screens on the continent. But then digital platforms, digital streaming, those marketplaces that don't exist are going to come alive. And they have to be built, because when you look at intra-Africa trade, the AFTCA, if the AFTCA gets anywhere close to objectives, this entire continent and these nations are going to grow massively. And within these sectors, the opportunity is endless. So what I really want to see and what I'm hoping to see is collaboration, convergence, the engineers in the hard industries who build infrastructure, collaborating with the creatives who have the IP and the ideas. So I could have the IP and idea, you have the platform, we can find a way to partner and we can come to the market. And as we do these things, the biggest opportunity is the domestic opportunity. It's great to globalize.
Yeah.
I love the fact we're globalized. I love the fact that Burna Boy is selling out Olympic Stadium in London this summer. Wizkid, the Spurs Stadium this summer. It's wonderful. But I'll be even happier when they sell out 60-day tour in Nigeria, to a 100-day tour in Africa, and earn the same money. That's when we're gonna be, but that's coming. It's gonna come over the next decade. And as that comes, nobody's gonna ask any parent, oh, what do you do? Oh, you're a lighting person. Nobody's gonna ask you what that is, because you're getting paid seriously. Nobody's gonna ask you what the cameraman is doing or the makeup artist is doing, or because that's what the industry is. The person on stage is 0.1, is the 500, 1,000 that are making it possible for him to be on stage. In that venue, the security, the logistics, the transport, the procurement, these things are the key things. So the thing about it is, it's about how to put our people to work. It's about how to create those opportunities, enable them, because we're not gonna create jobs, but we can create fixed work in employees, people who are gonna have skills that can work anywhere in the world, on the continent or anywhere in the world as remote workers. And Africa can easily skill up 100 million people in the next 5 years. It's that kind of, we have to be aggressive. Africa needs to skill up and tool up. Nigeria needs to skill up. 10 million, I see all these programs, 50,000, we need 10 million per year skilled up. When you get those 10 million people skilled up, you check how the economy changes. Do you understand? It's skills. An opportunity is no longer about what you studied, it's about what you know. So I think that's where we're...
I love that, Mr. Obi. And what about for ASP? Where do you see ASP in the next 5 to 7 years or 7 to 10?
I think ASP, frankly, ASP2 stays a very, very strong policy unit, affecting certain key areas. I think academia, in terms of knowledge and policy, government, policy, and then the sectors. Because I think ASP can also involve advisory services and get into that in terms of sectors and helping funneling resources, whether it's training, whether it's skills, whether it's funding, to support players in these sectors. Because ASP to me is really about a platform and a funnel that can help to accelerate and innovate all of the players. Because when you converge people, you're catalyzing.
Yeah.
The convergence is not necessarily the plan. We don't know what's going to come out of that. But by the time you have a curator in Brazil sitting with an artist in Kenya and a promoter in Lagos, anything can happen.
Sure.
And that is the beauty of what I want to see coming in the future. That out of some of these associations like the Kigali events, there will be some collaborations that will happen offline, that will manifest into projects that will affect everybody. That's my prayer for ASP.
That's my prayer too.
Yeah,
Looking forward.
positive value.
Of course. Now, any last words before we wrap it up?
Just to say congratulations to ASP and the team, to Nkiru and her team, to say come to Kigali, come and enjoy, come and celebrate, come and share knowledge. Because the thing we have, that we all have, is we all have some level of knowledge to bring to the table. So everybody has value. And that's the most important thing for people to understand. There's nobody that's too young or too old to participate in the conversation.
Yeah.
As long as your heart is in the right place. And for me, if you're human, you're African. So it's not even about color. Visit Africa Soft Power, you're calling us out. No. Last time I checked, everybody was African. Everybody came from here. So just embrace your inner African and come and join the party.
Thank you so much, Mr. Obi. For more information on how to attend the Africa Soft Power Summit, visit the africasoftpowerproject.com. And for more information on Africa Soft Power, visit africasoftpower.com. Thank you so much.